Subscribe to our channel, World News. Fighting between Israel and Hamas escalated in what has become the heaviest flare-up since the 2014 Gaza war. At least 200 people were killed in the Gaza Strip, and 10 in Israel in the most intensive aerial exchanges in years. On Saturday, an Israeli man was killed after a barrage of rocket fire targeted Tel Aviv in central Israel, shattering 2 days of calm in the region. Israel carried out hundreds of air and several ground strikes in Gaza, but IDF troops did not enter Gaza as part of a ground invasion. Gazan militants have fired some 3,000 rockets at central and southern Israel since Monday. Israel and Hamas were not calm when starting Tuesday night. Moreover, missiles started to arrive in Israel from neighboring countries. Missiles had previously been fired from Syria and Lebanon to Israel. Today, a missile attack, thought to be much more organized than the Lebanese soil, was carried out. With Israel's response to the attack, there was a risk that the conflict would spread to a wider geography. The King of Jordan accused Israel of provoking a ceasefire call from U.S. President Joe Biden. U.S. Foreign Minister Blinken implicitly accused Israel of the media building attack. Blinken said in a statement, "I did not see any evidence of Hamas operations in the Gaza media building, which was downed by Israel." He used striking expressions. Let's start examining the details together. At 11 p.m. sirens sound in Dera, Sha'ar HaNegev Regional Council. At 11:15 p.m. rocket barrage targets Ashkelon and surrounding area. At 11:20 p.m. the Israeli army said that a siren had sounded in northern Israel, near the border with Lebanon, and that they were investigating. Residents of Misgav, near the border, were instructed to stay in their homes. Residents also reported hearing explosions. Echoes of the explosions could be heard in nearby towns including Metula. The head of the Upper Galilee Regional Council said, "A siren was heard in Misgav and we heard an explosion. We are speaking with the army about opening additional shelters in the area. For now, there are no changes to the guidelines." At 11:44 p.m., the Israeli army has identified Monday's 6 rocket launches toward northern Israel, the army said in a statement. In response to shelling on targets in Lebanon, Israeli army artillery began operating. Local Lebanese have already found fragments of Israeli shells. On the other hand, Jordan's king, in a call with the United Nations Secretary-General, said the recurrent provocative Israeli actions against Palestinians have led to the ongoing escalation, pushing the region towards more tension, the royal court wrote on Twitter on Monday. King Abdullah said the international community must shoulder its responsibility, move actively to stop Israeli violations in Jerusalem, aggression on Gaza, adding that, he has always warned against altering the historical and legal status quo in Jerusalem, according to the royal court. In addition, the U.S. President Joe Biden spoke overnight Monday with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. The president reiterated his firm support for Israel's right to defend itself against indiscriminate rocket attacks, a White House statement said. Biden welcomed efforts to address intercommunal violence and to bring calm to Jerusalem. He encouraged Israel to make every effort to ensure the protection of innocent civilians. The two leaders discussed progress in Israel's military operations against Hamas and other terrorist groups in Gaza, the statement added. Moreover, Biden expressed his support for a ceasefire and discussed U.S. engagement with Egypt and other partners towards that end. The two leaders agreed that they and their teams would remain in close touch. In addition, speaking at a news conference in Copenhagen, the U.S. Secretary of State directly contradicts Netanyahu and says he has pressed Israel for justification. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Monday he hasn't yet seen any evidence supporting Israel's claim that Hamas operated in a Gaza building housing the Associated Press and other media outlets that was destroyed by an Israeli airstrike. Blinken said he has pressed Israel for justification. Blinken spoke at a news conference in Copenhagen, Denmark, a day after the Associated Press's top editor called for an independent investigation into the Israeli airstrike over the weekend that targeted and destroyed a Gaza City building housing the AP, broadcaster Al Jazeera and other media, saying the public deserves to know the facts. Israel destroyed a building housing the Associated Press and Al Jazeera and claimed that Hamas used the building for a military intelligence office. Separately, media watchdog Reporters Without Borders asked the International Criminal Court to investigate Israel's bombing of a building housing the media organizations as a possible war crime. Sally Busby, AP's executive editor, said that the Israeli government has yet to provide clear evidence supporting its attack, which leveled the 12-story Al-Jalaa tower. The Israeli military, which gave AP journalists and other tenants about an hour to evacuate, claimed Hamas used the building for a military intelligence office and weapons development. Israeli military spokesman Lieutenant Col. Jonathan Conricus said Israel was compiling evidence for the U.S. but declined to commit to providing it within the next 2 days. Blinken said he has not seen any Israeli evidence of Hamas operating in the building and has asked Israel for justification for the strike. Shortly after the strike, we did request additional details regarding the justification for it, Blinken said from Copenhagen, Denmark. He declined to discuss specific intelligence, saying he will leave it to others to characterize if any information has been shared in our assessment that information. But he said, I have not seen any information provided. On Sunday, Conricus, the Israeli military spokesman said, we're in the middle of fighting. That's in process and I'm sure in due time that information will be presented. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel would share any evidence of Hamas presence in the targeted building through intelligence channels. But neither the White House nor the State Department would say if any American official had seen it. Busby said the AP has had offices in Al-Jalaa Tower for 15 years and never was informed or had any indication that Hamas might be in the building. She said the facts must be laid out. We are in a conflict situation, Busby said. We do not take sides in that conflict. We heard Israelis say they have evidence. We don't know what that evidence is. We think it's appropriate at this point for there to be an independent look at what happened yesterday, an independent investigation, she added. In remarks Sunday, Netanyahu repeated Israel's claim that the building housed an intelligence office of Hamas. Asked if he had relayed supporting evidence of that in a call with President Joe Biden on Saturday, Netanyahu said that we pass it through our intelligence people. The Paris-based Reporters Without Borders, known by its French acronym RSF, said in a letter to the court's chief prosecutor that the offices of 23 international and local media organizations have been destroyed over the past 6 days. RSF said it had strong reason to believe that the Israeli military's intentional targeting of media organizations and intentional destruction of their equipment could violate one of the court's statutes. It said the attacks served to reduce, if not neutralize, the media's capacity to inform the public. RSF asked the International Court, based in the Dutch city of The Hague, to include the recent attacks in a war crimes probe opened in March into Israel's practices in Palestinian territories. Busby said the AP journalists were rattled after the airstrike but are doing fine and reporting the news. She expressed concern about the impact on news coverage. This does impact the world's right to know what is happening on both sides of the conflict in real time, she said. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke by phone Saturday with AP's president and CEO, Gary Pruitt. The State Department said Blinken offered his unwavering support for independent journalists and media organizations around the world and noted the indispensability of their reporting in conflict zones. Busby and Conricus spoke on CNN's Reliable Sources, and Netanyahu was on CBS, Face the Nation.